Okay, we are going to encrypt a user's home directory in Ubuntu 20.04. This is no longer an option during the installation of Ubuntu 20. It used to be in previous versions, and we'd like to get it set up just for various reasons. The new way the encryption works in Ubuntu is full disk encryption or partition encryption, wherever you want to call it. The downside to that is if the machine reboots, you need to enter a password in order to access it with SSH or your files or network share, whatever. But you don't necessarily want your user directory to be unencrypted. So in order to allow the machine to reboot without having to enter an unlock password for the hard drive, we need to encrypt the home directory. So let's do that. And this is a proper way to do it so that when the user logs out, the directory is encrypted, because that isn't typical. Okay, so we're going to log into our administrator user here. Okay, so this is a brand new fresh install. There's nothing in my home directory, so let's add a couple things. Okay, I'll put a couple test files. We'll put some content into those files. This is a test. I'll write that file, colon, escape, and then colon, WQ for write and quit. Okay, so this is the user that I want to encrypt. I want to encrypt the administrator user's home directory. And you can see I have a couple test files, and you can see if we go back a directory to home, by default, with these permissions, anyone can read my administrator home folder. I don't want that. I don't want another user to be able to log in and access my directories inside my home folder or my home directory. We can demonstrate this by creating another user and navigating into the administrator home directory and reading a file. So let's do that. So let's create a new user. Okay, we'll name him test user. Okay, and then a password for the new user. We don't care about any of this stuff. Yes, that's correct. Okay, so now we have another user. They don't have any sudo privileges or administrative privileges. They're just another user. So let's log out. And we will log in as that user. Here I am. No data in there. But if we go to, we can see the administrator's data. This is just a regular user. I can, oops. This is a test. So the administrator's super secret documents that are on here, well, I can see them. So let's log in. Let's log in with the administrator. Okay, so now we have, and then the administrator can also see the user's documents. so there's nothing in there. We also want to encrypt the administrator directory, but right now test user doesn't have the ability to do that. So what we'll do is we'll give the test user the ability to do that. So sudo usermod. Okay, so basically we're just assigning sudo permissions to test user. And then we'll log out of administrator because we don't want to be in the administrator account while that gets changed. So we'll log back in as our test user. Once we're logged in, we're going to download some software. So sudo apt install. We're going to get ecryptfs utils and encrypt setup. Okay, those are the two modules we need, two applications, whatever you want to call them. Okay, then we're going to use the ecryptfs module application to migrate the administrator's home into an encrypted file, basically. So we use sudo ecryptfs migrate home -u for user, and the user is administrator. Okay, let's see what that error is about. Okay, so it looks like I just have another SSH logged in. So I logged that out, so let's try it again. Alright, so now it's asking for the passphrase. We'll just put in the administrator user passphrase, password that we use to log in. Should match. Pretty quick to add those files. You can go over these notes. Basically what it's saying is do not turn off this machine or power off this operating system without logging into the administrator first. If you don't do that, you will lose the encryption and you'll have to restore your files from the backup that it's created there in point 2. It's home/administrator dot some random words. And then once we're in the administrator user, we will issue the command ecryptfs unwrap passphrase, and that will give us basically a decryption passphrase, a recovery passphrase. If anything happens to this home directory, if we want to move it or we need to mount it from another user or something, we can use that passphrase. Okay, so let's log in. With the administrator user. Okay, you can see here, we're logged in. There's our two files. And now we have some links to ecryptfs and .private. Those will basically store the information. Now, this is where most tutorials end, saying it's done. Well, actually, let's issue this command first. Ecryptfs. We'll get our passphrase. Okay. Okay. We entered the passphrase that we created from the other user, and this gives us this key. We can use that to decrypt this, even from another user, I believe. So this is where normally this would end. The downside to this isn't really complete. So what we can do is we can log out of this user. We can go back to our test user. We can go to cd home administrator. We have permission denied. Let's see why. So the permissions have changed. So the test user doesn't have permissions to go into that directory. But this user has sudo abilities, which means they can change those. We can change that directory. We can look inside there. Sudo chmod. We'll do 70. Let's just do 704. So administrator has read, write, execute, everybody, none, and then, or sorry, the group has none, and then read just for everybody. And we'll do that on the administrator here. What does that look like? Now read. Let's see. ls. So I can see those two files. If I want to have access to those files, I can change this to A5. Do the same thing. Okay, so now I can get administrator test file 1. This is a test. Nothing's encrypted. So we have to take this a step further. We have to encrypt this whenever the administrator logs out. So we don't want people to access it while the administrator is not logged in. Still not 100% ideal, but it is better than this. If you want to store files here and when you're not logged in, be sure that they're encrypted. So let's do that. What we're going to do is we're going to go to the PAM directory here. Oops. pam.d. There's a couple files in here. Files that we're going to be working with are right here. Going to be these two and this one here. So what we want to do is we're going to use vi, sudo vi common auth, and we're going to go down here. We're going to go to this option right here and make this required. Escape, right? Okay. Then we're going to modify password. We're going to go to this line with PAM encrypt, and actually what we're going to do is we're just going to comment this out. Okay. We're going to do the same thing for session interactive. We're going to go down to the line where ecryptfs.so is, comment that out. Now, when the administrator logs out, the files will be encrypted. Okay, so we can still see here that they are not encrypted. Still available, I can still read them as a different test user. So let's log in as administrator. Okay, now we're logged in. Now let's log out. So there we have permission denied. We can no longer get into administrator because it has changed the credentials, or the permissions, sorry. And even if we were able to get into there, so let's go back, push up a few times here, change those permissions. Files are gone. This is what we want. So I can't mount or see what's inside this directory unless the administrator is logged in currently. So let's demonstrate that. And we will go like this. Duplicate session. We'll get our session, administrator. Okay. So now the administrator is logged in. There's our files, but also the administrator's permissions have stayed the same. So let's go into the administrator directory, and we also can see those files. It's not ideal. This is the best we can do though, without having a user change the permissions on a directory. So typically, a regular user wouldn't have permission to change those. But if they do, at least your files are still private when your user is not logged in. And before we go, we will delete the backup of our home directory. You can see here it is called administrator.2c4ydtjb. So we're just going to do a rm of that. Oh, sorry, it's a directory, so rm-rf. Okay, we're going to delete that. Use sudo. Okay. Now any files that were in there when we originally did the migrate are taken care of. There are ways to get rid of it a little bit better, maybe shred it. It's technically still there. If someone got a hold of the hard drive and did some data recovery, that folder might still be there. So that's another discussion on getting rid of those files. In the next video, what we'll do is we will also encrypt the swap directory. So swap contains it can contain a lot of credentials or keys or a lot of information that is in your home directory. We don't want that in there, so we want it to be encrypted. And we'll do that in the next video. Thanks.